Good evening and welcome to Suffering in Silence with Pastor Tia here on LuvBay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. LuvBay, we are rising out of the ashes together. We have with us tonight Merisia Challenger. She's the guest of Gospel Sunday on LuvBay. And we have joining us via telephone Mark Daria, our co-host for the evening. And our topic for tonight is giving voice to your inner child. So listeners, if you have any questions or comments for our guest or our co-host, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. You can also text us or call the number 437-778-3299. And we do want to take a moment to remind you to please like, share, or subscribe via whichever social media platform you are watching us by. If you have any resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level from your country, your community, any local organizations, or your faith community, you can also email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. And with that, Mark, I would ask if you would go first and greeting LuvBay on tonight. Mark, can you hear me? Okay, so Merisia, I'm going to ask that you would go first.
I guess ladies first, huh?
Yes.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you again, Pastor Tia and Mark, for inviting me back to this to your show. I am super excited to have this discussion on tonight's topic, and we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have fun tonight, right? We're gonna have lots of fun. Yeah.
Yes. So, Mark, I wasn't able to hear you, but I mean, just jump in there, as time goes on, and hopefully we'll be able to hear you as we move forward. In the meantime, I want to share some resources. So, LuvBay, we are still, as always, in a process of raising funds for our nonprofit, Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc. If you would like to make a tax-deductible donation, you can do so. You can visit GoFundMe and find our nonprofit, which is Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc. Or you can send in a check if you would like, made out to Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc. at P.O. Box 15, Drexel Hill, PA 19026. You can also purchase my book, which is Suffering in Silence. It's available on Amazon. We do use proceeds from that to help individuals with transitional resources. The biggest thing that we do is our endeavor with immediate and emergency funding. We help individuals with transportation, with getting to safe locations, medication, personal toiletries. However we can financially support victims and survivors of domestic violence, we do that, and we need your help to be able to continue doing that. We want to share the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services National Helpline. Their number is 800-662-4357. We also want to share the Befrienders Volunteer Action to Prevent Suicide. To find a helpline by your country, you can visit their website, which is befrienders.org. In the United States, we have the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Their website is thehotline.org. Their number is 1-800-799-7233. In Canada, we have the Canadian Women's Foundation. Their website is canadianwomen.org. Their number is 1-866-293-4483. And in the UK, we have the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. Their website is nationaldahelpline.org.uk. Their number is 0808-2000-247, or you can visit Women's Aid, AID. Their website is womensaid.org.uk. And with that, we move into our topic for this evening, giving voice to your inner child. This is a a conversation that I briefly had with Merisia, a talk that I've had with Mark, and we really just want to just put on the table those discussions to bring these conversations to your homes. And as always, what we want to do is start a conversation that's going to be able to help to at least start a change, start dialogue within your personal spaces wherever you are, hopefully to move through your family, your home, and communities to bring about a positive change. I believe any conversation is not worth its salt if it doesn't lead to some kind of change, positive change, that is. So I want to share just some words from psychology today, Marissa, and then just talk as we've been talking about this subject, giving voice to your inner child. Um, and so, what I have pulled from psychology today, it says acknowledging childhood trauma is crucial for adults as it helps in understanding the impact of past experiences on their current mental and emotional well being. It allows individuals to process their feelings and address the root causes of their trauma, leading to personal growth and healing. Recognizing the trauma and its effects can also facilitate the development of healthier coping mechanisms and improve overall life quality. And as we move forward, there's a bit of an article I want to share some pieces of. But Maricia, my thought was when I first thought of this topic, this subject, giving voice to your inner child, there are so many adults that I see, and I mean 40s, 50s, 60s, who are dealing with issues or who are still trying to bury issues or push it away from childhood, but it's affecting them today. And I really, really wanted to be an encouragement to individuals to, you know, to say it's okay. You now is the time to give yourself that space, that 5-year old you, that 11-year old you, that 16 or 17-year old you. Like this is the time to give yourself the space to put words to it. I think to verbalize it, to admit it, to be able to speak it in an atmosphere that's going to be supportive of you. You know, you don't want to just lay your heart and soul out just anywhere at any time with just anybody, but in a safe space, in a healthy space. I really, really want to emphasize it's okay to give that child in you the space and the voice so you can heal, so you can start the process of healing and move forward. But I really do see it, and it has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with gender. It has nothing to do with your financial or educational background. There are adults suffering mentally and emotionally because they have not properly taken care of the child within them, and that's something that I see today. So is that just me? Marissa, I mean, can you attest to that in your circle or what you do, what you see? Is that something?
I just want to start off and say that this is a very delicate topic, because a lot of people, like you said, they have created within themselves a sense of reality where they have suppressed that experience, and they are learning to live with it. And each day that goes by, they're thinking that, it's becoming too late, to the point where now it's 20, 30, 50 years after, and they're like, oh my God, there's no need to talk about this anymore. So you bringing this to the platform and bringing it up to the surface, I think a lot of people would be relieved to know that I can identify with what you're saying, because I had whatever experience it was that happened to me when I was, 5, 6 years old, or a bit older or whatever. But understanding that you have a voice,
Yes.
understanding that you know it doesn't matter how many time has passed since you've experienced a trauma,
You're there, right?
you still have a voice to to speak about it. Because as Tia said, part of the healing process is acknowledging that what has happened to you, as scary and as horrific it was, acknowledging what has happened to you and say, you know what? I'm going to start loving myself. I'm going to start getting some help because I need to get out of this rut and learn to live life freely and truly and realistically. So,
Yes.
you bringing this to the platform tonight, I applaud you because there's so many people that has gone through this type of experiences, but they don't know where to turn. They don't know where to start. And I think during, the conversation that we have, I think one of the best ways to start is the Bible.
Mm,
You open up that book and you start asking God, you know what? I don't understand why this happened to me. I don't understand why you permitted to me, but I'm going to make myself vulnerable and open to you, to listen to your voice and show me what do I need to do next to start healing myself, because this is not the way I want to live the rest of my life. I want to be able to be realistic with what's, with my experiences, be able to love you and love myself, love my family, and just live life fully as how it's supposed to be.
yes. And so thank you so much for the words that you have just shared. And Mark made a really good point. I want to share that he said that it's important to emphasize that both positive and negative experiences are acknowledged. Um, and that, this means that we are wrestling in part with adult understanding of childhood interpretations. I mean, Mark, if you're there, then you can jump in on your point. But
Yeah.
I wanted to share that.
Go ahead.
Are you there, Mark?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, to his point of acknowledging positive and negative experiences, even just looking
Go
back
ahead.
at myself,
Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
I absolutely can
Say something.
remember the negative experiences, but even in that point that he just made, I just remembered a positive experience. Like I thought it was a positive experience, but it I can see a negative connotation to it now, but still giving myself the space to acknowledge that. So I remember as a child not being able to express any type of emotion.
And I'll boost it up.
I remember what I thought was Mark, did you say my name?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes, I can hear you. So I was just expounding on the point you made of acknowledging negative and positive experiences as a child. Having that adult understanding with this. So you wanna go with your point there?
Well, I think you were kind of hitting it. I was in the background talking, so I'm not entirely sure where you were, but I'm glad we're remedied the problem. Let's hope it lasts. But yeah, I mean, basically what I was saying is that I was actually thinking convey it. If I can jump in and convey a story. When I was growing up, I kind of associated with a couple of different families that helped raise me. I know I've mentioned that before because my own home life was somewhat difficult on a lot of perspectives. But one family that was very closely attached to was 7 brothers. And 2 of them were very close in age. They were just a little over a year apart. And I was good friends with both of them. As we reached adulthood, talking to them about their childhood, which I was intimately involved in, obviously, they both had 180-degree perspectives. One felt that it was a horrible environment, hostile. The parents were always fighting and arguing, and there was alcohol, and it was horrendous. And the other one was there were issues, but it was a loving environment. Mom and Dad always took care of us. We had fights as all siblings do, but it was basically a darn good life. And so it's very interesting because I was kind of watching both of them and shaking my head, and I agreed with the latter, not the former. I saw a lot of love and I saw a lot of sacrifice, like any family. It was somewhat crazy. So it really spoke to me when I was reading up on this evening, and the emphasis on the positive and the negative. And I do think it's very important as that we don't. I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, but that we don't indulge just the negative side of it and say, "Oh, life is horrible," and my life was just so bad. And I think it's very valuable to look back with a critical eye and say, in adulthood, I can understand causes and motivations that parents may have made or older people may have made that as a child may have seemed insensitive, but in adulthood, they have explanation. And again, I'm not talking about abuse or anything like that. I'm just saying in a relatively quote unquote normal environment. Is that making sense? Does that speak to anything?
And so, I mean, I do agree with the additional perspectives that you brought up, which was, again, with inside of you, that child, if you had it, then yes, remember the positive. But that negative connotation, I think, so, I mean, I do, was sealed, I believe, with I can say I'm 49, so a lot of people my age grew up with, it stays in his house, be quiet about it, and that's just it, that's secret. But again, even personally for me, my experience was I couldn't even be happy. Like I couldn't express joy. I remember a football game being on TV. Like I knew nothing about football. I was a kid. I had to have been like 6 or 7 years old. I remember the Raiders were playing because I just remember the colors, the black and the silver. And I just liked the Raiders because that's what I remember that day seeing on TV. And I don't know who had the ball, but he had the ball. He was running. He made a touchdown. I was so happy. I was excited. I didn't know what was going on, but everybody on television was happy. I was jumping up and down, and my mother looked at me and was like, "What are you doing? What's going on?" And I'm like, I was just, I was excited. But at that moment right there it was suppressed. It was like, no, you can't laugh. You can't joke. You can't do that. And so what would have been, I think, just a normal moment, not just to say that it was positive, but just a normal moment, I couldn't have that. And so I know that me as a child, I suppressed everything. I remember being a teenager, being 14, 15 years old. I was living with one of my grandmothers, and it was just so intense, emotionally, verbally abusive. I thought the only way that this is going to stop is if I kill her. That's what was in my mind as a 14-year-old. Now, when I got into, I think I was in my late 20s when I started processing that, thinking about that, giving a voice to that 14-year-old, because I was plotting in my mind, like the only way for this to stop is if I kill her. And I remember going through scenarios to do this or do that. And I would get to the end of this plan in my mind. I can't, because this is going to be too much here. I'm not going to be able to get away with this. I'm not going to be able to get rid of this evidence. Like in my mind, I was going through these scenarios, but it wasn't until I was adult to be able to give voice to myself. No, that wasn't right. That situation that I was in, that atmosphere, being able as an adult to put words to it, to be able to know what verbal abuse was, emotional abuse, to be able to say, I was a child. I should not have been in that environment. I should not have been in a place where I was thinking the only way that I'm going to get out of this is to kill the person that is hurting me. And I think a lot of us are in that situation where that's what we came through, but it's still with us. It's still mentally there. It's still emotionally there. And for me, it came out in different ways. So in different parts of my life, as I was going through, where I thought, all right, I'm just dealing with this trauma right here, right now. It wasn't until I was an adult that I realized trauma didn't start in my life. Violence didn't start in my life when I was married. It started when I was a child. And being able to see how one issue just compounded on top of the other because I wasn't dealing with it. I didn't have the faculties to deal with it as a child. It was, let me just push this away. It's over. It's not happening anymore. Let me move into the next part of my life. So without being healed, I moved into another part, and I had that trauma with more trauma just dumped on top of it. And so then I found myself as an adult being angry in situations I shouldn't have been angry in, just feeling all types of ways that I should not have been feeling, but then being able to say, I got to look at my childhood and see where this stuff came from and be able to say, no, that shouldn't have happened at 5 years old, at 6 years old. No, it's not normal to not allow a child to be happy or express happiness. It's not normal for a child to see their siblings being hurt and being told, don't say anything, keep this to yourself. So there are so many struggling with that. I really, really wanted to just take a moment to say, yes, deal with it. It's okay to be open and be honest about that. I want to share a part of an article, and then Merisia, I will go right back to you for your thoughts. But I just really see how men and women are really just bogged down with moving on in the rest of their lives because they are carrying that hurt and pain from their childhoods. So this is an article that was written March 31st of this year by Maja. I want to say Vucetic. I'm so sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. It's Vucetic. It's Healing from Childhood Trauma, Tips for Adults. And it says in the U.S., no, I don't want to start there. Lasting effects of childhood trauma often stay hidden in adults. The Centers for Disease Control links early trauma to chronic conditions like heart disease and diabetes. Over 2/3 of children face at least one traumatic event by the age of 16, per the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Adults with childhood trauma are 3 to 5 times more likely to develop addiction or chronic health conditions. 70% of addiction recovery programs cite childhood trauma as a key factor in substance abuse. Trauma-informed care reduces PTSD symptoms by 30%, offering a pathway to trauma recovery. And my last point, and Merisia, I'll turn it over to you from the article, is that childhood trauma accounts for 1/3 of adult mental health diagnoses per the National Health Services.
Wow. Just listening to you speak about, your experience, and I can't imagine even putting myself in that situation. But the person that, one of the things I kept on repeating in my mind is like your power. One of the things I tell my son is do not let anyone take your power, because once your power is taken, you become vulnerable. You become vulnerable, you don't know your self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And all it takes is for you to be in that wrong setting, the wrong people, and everything just starts unraveling. Everything in your life just starts becoming chaotic. And to have a child, and again, I'm just, imagining a child going through that and going to school and just trying to wonder, how can I not connect with any of these kids? They're on the sideline and looking at these children laughing, and in their mind, connecting that to having a happy home and wondering, why can I not have that? Why does this have to happen to me? And it's such a dangerous threshold to be at, because with that, it comes, like what you said, it becomes, depression. It
Yeah.
opens the door to, to want to lash out, like what you were saying. The only way I can get out is to kill this person. And it comes out, it boils down to not loving yourself. So you're thinking that you're worthless. Anything that comes by, well, you know what, I'm just gonna have to take it because I'm worth nothing. And to have someone live like that, the bulk of their life, and not realizing, you know what, I am worth something.
Yeah.
You know what, I was made in the image of God. And with knowing that fact and having those, just those things that can give me some kind of uplifting spirit, that gives me that push that I need. Because it's like, you're locked in, you're boxed in, you're suffocating, but there's no way to turn, and you don't know who can I go for help. And especially if the cause of that issue is in your home, where it's supposed to be the safest place for a child, it's like, what else is for me to do? Where else can I go? So, we have to push this out and let these kids know you don't have to wait until you're in, you're later on in years. And like you said, sometimes, as the years go on and you're becoming a little bit more wiser with worldly experiences, you kind of like try to figure out, okay, this is not right. That shouldn't happen to me. But still, you're not there yet, because you still need that extra push to go and get help. And, to have that weight on your shoulders, and you're carrying that. And in addition to that, in all this process, you yourself are creating your own family, and you're trying to figure out, how can I connect with my child? How can I let my child know, if this happens, it shouldn't happen? And then I think Tia and I, we spoke about, it's passing down from generation to generation, because you start identifying it as something that is normal, something that is an expression of love, and you thinking that this happening to your child, and you're sitting in the background and not saying anything. It's showing that, it's okay, because that happened to me, and look, I'm okay. But in reality, you're not. And it goes from generation to generation to generation. And we got to let people know that you have the right, you have the power within yourself to say, you know what, enough is enough. I
Yes.
want to go and get help. I want to go on and get help, because I know I have some self-worth in me. I know I can pass that love that I deserve onto my children, and let them know, if this is happening to you, it's not okay. And you
Yes.
don't have to wait until you're in your later years, the later parts of your life, to start seeking help. So, it's just like, when you're saying these things, I'm just imagining this child sitting, in the cafeteria at school, or in the playground at school, and just looking and wondering, like, why can't I be happy like them? What is wrong with me? Why do I deserve to be happy? I deserve to have a home where I can feel safe, and don't, have to, without worrying about, I can't say this or I can't say that. So, we got to reach out to our children and let them know that, when you're feeling this way, it's okay to speak to me. We are going to go and get help, because you need to learn how to, start loving and living life again, and not carrying this weight on your shoulder, because at the end of the day, it's not doing you any good. And, and part of this whole process, and I think we touched on that, is forgiveness, because that's such a key thing. Because for you to start genuinely healing, you got to let it go. Let go and let God. Let go and let God, because forgiveness is not just for them, it's for you. That's part of your healing process. That's one of the initial steps, I think, is and it's very important. Any
Yeah.
thoughts?
And it really is about doing what you need to do for yourself, allowing yourself to finally be free, because the issues that happen as a child do not have to define who you are. Whatever happened, whoever did it, it's not you. And you talked about God. Now, as a child, I always believed in God. I don't know why. I just did. I just always knew that there was a God, and I just believed. I just believed that He was up there in the sky, and He was watching me, and He was good, and He loved me. I always believed that since I was a little girl. Now, going through what I went through, the people who were hurting me were people who went to church, were people who were singing in a choir, who were cool with the pastor. And so I saw the conflict in front of me. Like, there's a God that I believe in and that I love, but I see people who are hurting me this way. And so I want to say, to that adult, and you're struggling with those issues, God did not do that. People have the autonomy to make decisions, good or bad. And unfortunately, some people who were supposed to love you and care for you and protect you, they made the wrong decision. So there are some adults who are struggling with blaming God for what these people did. So I want to say that because somebody needs to hear that it wasn't God. God did not do that. But it's okay for you to say that. It's okay for you to ask, like, all right, God, where were you and it's okay to allow yourself that space to say that and to feel that. For me, I think something that helped me was that there were people around me who saw what I was going through. There were some people who were like, They just thought my grandmother was just this wonderful person.
That's what I
So
think.
it didn't matter what I said. They just believed her. But there were some people in my immediate circle who knew what she was doing because she did stuff to them. And so that right there helped me to not, I think, just go crazy. Because I'm like, I know I didn't just make this up. I know she just did what she did. I know she just said what she said. And so for me, there were some people who could validate what I was thinking and feeling, you know, at that time. But I want to share a bit more of this article before we move on.
How do I?
And the article says further, and again, this is Healing from Childhood Trauma, written by Maha Vucetic. I'm so sorry if I did not say your name right again. Vucetic. And it says these events change how our bodies and brains work, affecting us as adults. And some common types of childhood trauma: physical and sexual abuse and emotional abuse, emotional neglect or physical neglect, witnessing domestic violence or community violence, traumatic loss of a loved one. The CDC says that these types of childhood trauma raise the risk of depression, anxiety, and health problems in adults. People who were abused as kids are more likely to have PTSD or borderline personality disorder. Finding trauma symptoms in adults can be tricky. It's not just about what you see on the surface. Unresolved childhood trauma can show up in many ways, like constant anxiety or feeling numb. You might also see signs like always being on guard, avoiding certain places, or getting angry for no reason. And I couldn't put words to this until I was an adult. But like I recognize always being on guard. I mean, physically being on guard. There are times I would be holding my breath and I didn't know it. There are times that my body would be tense. There are times I would physically be like in a fighting stance and I didn't know it. Like my body was just prepared. But it wasn't until I was an adult and able to put words to it. And I want to say not just being an adult, but being an adult and I realize something is not right and I want to do something about it. So I think that part is very important too. It's not just recognizing, all right, something isn't right, but it's actually making a decision. I might not know why I'm feeling this way, but I'm feeling this way and I know it's not right. And I want to, it's not about pointing fingers, but I want to get to the bottom of this. Because again, we talked about the generational thing. I don't want to pass this down. If my parents were like this, I'm going through this. I don't want my children to have to go through it. I saw it in my grandparents. I saw it in my parents. Like, why does it have to continue to go on? So I want to do what I need to do for me. So I say, just like in children, you know, you have children who are bursting out in anger. Well, you know what? Stop saying that that's just a bad child. You don't know if they had dinner last night. You don't know if they saw, you know, their parents hurting each other. But that child that we're looking at today, some of us, we were that child years ago. We need to give that child attention. We need to give that child love. We need to say, you know what? You are important at 4 years old. You were important at 14. And you are important at 44, 54, 64, 74. And it's okay to give yourself that space to say, it wasn't right. What was done to me wasn't right. And now I'm going to put some words to it. I want to say that I don't know who it may be for, but I want to say you deserve that. You deserve that space to allow your heart to be able to heal. It bothered me greatly at times when I would think and I would remember the things that I thought about doing to my grandmother to get her out of my life, to get her away from me. But I had to look at the whole picture. I had, like, that thought, those feelings didn't just come from nowhere. And so I had to be able to give voice to it and process it. And so again, in a safe space, don't just go anywhere and just say and do anything, but in a safe space, to be able to put those things like that out there and work it through. You deserve that. That's my thought on that, Marissa.
You know what? being an adult and just, looking and, now, because, talking about these things, like, it brings your awareness and be a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more sensitive, and just, just have and humbleness and humility when you're engaging with people like this. Because like you said, the child is acting out. Don't just summarize it and say, well, that's a rude child, and just toss the child in the corner and that, be done with it.
Right.
Have a conversation and find out what's going on, because that might be the only way that child knows to reach out, to say, I need help. And, I remember growing up in the Caribbean, I always, my mother always tells me, like, back then when she was growing up, it's like a village, takes a village to raise a child. And unfortunately, that concept has basically slowly disappeared from the communities. And once before, you're going into the schools and you're thinking, well, there's still some hope in the schools where, we can have some kind of counseling session done to our children. But again, it's seeping in everywhere where you look. So we gotta take a step out forward and let these people know that you're not victims. You have
Yes.
the right to say, I am gonna, I don't want to pass this on, like what you said earlier. I don't want to pass this on to my children. I want my children to be in a safe environment. I want my children to understand, most importantly, how to love themselves. Because if you don't, you're ending up in these abusive relationships, and you're taking
Yeah.
it because you're thinking, you know what? This is how I identify being loved. This is how it's acted out to me. So it got to be right. And
Yeah.
then you not knowing better, you're passing that trait on to your children, and it just keeps going, going, and going. But when you have that realization, and like, something is not right, something is not right. I deserve to be treated, like a human. You know, I deserve to be treated with respect. I deserve to, to live life the way, the way I was created to live life, and not in, the, in fear of being abused, or in fear of being pushed in the closet, or whatever it is. And, these kids, it always starts, as I always say on Gospel Sunday, it starts in the home. We got
Yeah.
to start teaching our children, you might have a friend that's in school with you, and you see, your and it might not even be your friend. I'm sorry. Going back with the scene with the cafeteria, you see some, a child sitting there by themselves. Go and make a friend, because you don't know, just you reaching out and talking to that child, you are opening a door, you're opening a portal that child probably never thought would have existed. So I think, we just got to teach our children how to be a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more compassionate. It's not all about me. It's not all about me. We gotta be kind. That's one of the fruits of the spirit. We gotta be kind. And I think it starts in the home. It
Yeah.
gotta start somewhere. We gotta start in the home.
And I want to say, as you were talking, the thought just came to me. Um, it's okay to grieve. It's okay to grieve what you did not have as a child. If you did not have those friendships that you felt like you wanted or needed, if you did not have the care and a compassion and a sympathy around you, it's okay to grieve what you did not have. I think that would be helpful to most of us if we gave ourselves that time and space to grieve. My father was not a father to me. I mean, before he passed away, I had the chance to talk with him and to um, reconcile, if I use that word. But he was not the father that he should have been in my life. I had to grieve that. I had to grieve not having that man in my life who was supposed to take care of me and be there for me. Um, I had to grieve not playing the violin. I wanted to play the violin. I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, that is what I wanted. I wanted to be first chair on the Philadelphia Orchestra. I mean, around the world. That was my thing. That was what I wanted to do. But I wasn't allowed to do that as a child. And I'm telling you, that hurt me very, very badly, to the point where, there were times in my life I tried to pick up the violin and learn. I mean, I purchased violins, and it was just like, it never like fit in. But my mind always kept going back to and I remember the day I was in the fourth grade. Like, this is what I wanted. Like, all my friends were able to go and be a part of the orchestra, but I couldn't. And I remember the day that, I asked my mother about it. She said no. She's like, you can't do this. She didn't want to pay $9 for the music book. I remember this like it was yesterday. And I was so upset, but I remember thinking to myself, but you're going to buy beer, but you're going to have the beer. And I also vividly remember, like, I couldn't push the issue because, like, I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get beat for this if I like really stand up and just say, like, this is what I want. I'm telling you, for years that tortured me because I know I would have been good. I know that was what I wanted. Like, even as an adult, like when I started, trying to take lessons, and like, my instructors would be like, well, you're just so naturally good. Like, I just naturally held the violin the right way. I naturally held the bow the right way. There were some things that just came naturally. But I'm like, if I had that as a child, I would have been able to be first chair, to have been first chair in somebody's orchestra. But that hurt me deeply. And so that may mean nothing to somebody else. But I'm telling you, that was a desire that was just so deeply embedded in my heart. Like, as an adult, there are times that I would cry. I broke down in tears. And I always, my mind would go back to, I couldn't do this thing that could have furthered my life in some beautiful ways. But I remember the alcohol. I remember the drugs. I remember the violence. I remember that. But this one thing that could have got me further in some different places in my life. Like, I could have gone to some different schools, if I had that talent, that musical talent. But that is something I had to grieve, and I had to let that go. And it still hurts now. It really does. So, there are some people who talk, I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be whatever. I wanted to be a musician. So I want to say, give place for grieving, and whatever it is. If it's important to you, then it's important. If it meant something to you, then grieve it. Grieve it for however long you need to grieve it, and then move past it. There are things in our child's mind, as Mark was saying earlier, we have to be able to understand it as an adult now. I just saw the world being against me. I saw that was unfair. I saw that if I speak up for myself, I'm going to be hurt for it. I had to process that in my adult mind, that 4-year-old heart. And it hurt. It hurt deeply. So give yourself that space because it means something. I don't think it's fair to say to somebody, just let it go. Just get over it. No, that's how we find ourselves in situations that compound one on top of another because we don't deal with the first issue. Like, we don't deal with that first layer in the foundation of hurt. No, we just skip right on over it, and then it keeps piling on top. Like, as I said, it wasn't until after my divorce, after I started dealing with myself, that I realized domestic violence did not start in my life with my marriage. That's what I saw as a child. And we live our lives and we go through so much, and it hurts so deeply. And I'm not saying that all pain will be eradicated and it will just go away. But what we go through and what happens, it could be a little bit easier. It could be a little bit lighter if we are allowed to deal with those things, the things that hurt us, the people that hurt us, the things that we lost or never had that for whatever reason are hurting. I think it's just absolutely unfair to try to look at another person's life and say, you're 70 years old, whatever. Why is that still making you cry? That's not fair. And again, it's real. Whatever it is, I don't care, whatever it is. If you wanted to paint, if you wanted to be an artist, if you don't have that, and a reason that you don't have it is because of some type of abuse, some type of hurt, some type of neglect, that's real. And it needs to be acknowledged. And I just think it's just unfair When you're looking at a person saying you have gray hair, you should be over it by now. At life, I've learned, life doesn't work like that. And it conversations, healthy conversations, um, can do a lot to help. I think so. To be able to, like this, put the conversation on the table. There are so many people, I've talked to who said, wow, I was thinking that, I was feeling that, I was just afraid to say it. I didn't want to be the first one to say it, or I didn't want to be saying it by myself. So, but it is here. So give yourself that space to grieve. I don't care what it is, who it is, where it was. If it's something that left a mark on you, you're still feeling it that way, give it the attention that it deserves and deal with it. I think it's that simple. Merisia.
And you know what? I like the fact that you mentioned grieving and taking your time, because this is an ongoing healing process. It's not going to be poof overnight, like, okay, I'm ready to go and let's go live life. That's, it's not going to happen that way. And you got to understand that, like what you said, it's going to be a process. You're going to go through different stages, and grieving is important because part of grieving is transforming into, I think, forgiveness. Because you're realizing now, more so breaking away from the reality that you've created throughout all these years, and you're ripping that apart, and you're facing whatever that trauma was head on. And as an adult, you're probably going to be asking yourself, how did I survive that? How did I go through that?
Yeah.
And as you're looking at it now with a third eye, it's like all you can do is just cry, because it's so heartbreaking to see the innocence of a child has been manipulated and taken away because of the actions of another person, or an adult, or whomever. And you're saying, like, how did I make it through? And you're at the point now where you're looking at the situation with a third eye. You've accepted that this has happened to you. You're grieving. And one of the things, what you said, as far as you wanted to be a musician, and I think, you know what, as long as there's life, there's still hope. Some of us are, some of us might have not had the chance to do, go to school. If you have if you have the mental capacity to, to stay focused, and you want to finish high school, or you want to get whatever degree or whatever, go do it. The world is yours, but the question is, how are you going to approach it, and how are you going to embrace it? Because again, it's going to come to a point where you got to step out of that victim mode, because you have to start, living life and grieving and getting over that process. You can't say, well, I'm grieving for a year and I still haven't gotten over it. There's still probably some things that you still are suppressing, and it
Yeah.
needs to come to the surface where you say, you know what, I can no longer keep this, suppressed. I got to bring it up, because part of the healing process and part of genuinely getting back to who I am is embracing all of it. And I think with all of that, you will at some point find the strength within yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to push forward. I'm going to keep pushing through this. So it's again, how are you now? You're more so of an adult, and you're looking at the situation with a third eye. How am I going to embrace the situation? How am I going to react to this situation? Am I going to keep folding my arms and say, you know what, I was an innocent child and it happened to me, and I'm just going to keep on suppressing it? Or are you going to say, you know what, out of these ashes, I'm going to rise, and I'm going to rise as a victor and no longer a victim. These words are easier said than done, especially if you're going through the process, but it's so important to have the right people around you. It's so important to have the right support system, because um, when you're talking about that, I remember the book of Job, when everything was taken away from Job, and he was just down to nothing. Even his wife was saying, just die and just get it over with. But you got to just stick with it, because you know what, again, there's strength in these trials and these tests. There's strength, but it's not going to come overnight, and it's easier said than done. So having the right network of people around you to just give you that extra push, because there are going to be some days when you're just tired, you're like, I'm weary, I just can't fight anymore. And to have that person say, you know what, you've come this far, just keep on pushing through. I think that's very important. And at the end of the day, especially if you have children and they're watching you going through this process, they too will be able to identify and say, you know what, I now know what to look for, and I know now how to approach this situation and try and get through this as quickly as possible so I can get back on track and live my life. So when I have kids myself, this is already broken, and I can now give them that healthy, safe home that every child deserves to have. Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I want to emphasize that we are not telling anyone to go sit down and go through your childhood and conjure up some
No.
some memories. Like, nah, we are not telling you go looking for painful moments. No. So I know for myself in particular, I believe that God knows when you're ready to deal with issues. And I want to say this, and then I'll go to Mark if he can hear us. But for me, having to deal with my childhood came at a time where my heart was just really heavy with some things. Like, there were just things that I started to remember. There were feelings that I was having. It was like I couldn't shake it. I couldn't move past it without addressing it. So it's not like I just sat down and just started taking notes. All right, 1984 and trying to write down things. And no, there just happened to be times in my life. I believe God knew I was ready, and things just started coming to my attention that I had to deal with. And so I did it when I was ready. I didn't go searching down memory lane for stuff. So if you are ready to deal with issues, then you deal with them. And I want to say this, and then I'll go right to Mark. As Mark said before, if you have joyful moments, if you had a beautiful childhood, if you had some wonderful experiences, celebrate that. Remember that. Don't bury it. If you had those friends, if you had that loving atmosphere, that's beautiful. Don't hide it, because I think on the other side of that, individuals can try to make you feel bad because you know what, you did have it good, and that's okay. Don't hide it. Don't hide your accomplishments. Don't hide the love. Don't hide the success that you had. That's a part of you. It made you who you are. You want to share it, then share it. So don't shy away from that. And no, looking back over your life, dealing with issues, it doesn't have to be all traumatic. It doesn't have to be. Mark, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. I listen. I got like 30 things jotted down here, and I know we don't have time to go into it. So I'm just gonna kind of bullet point a couple of quick observations here. And one of the harsh realities of life is that it isn't. People have a positive life or a negative life. The truth is it's both. Right? There are positive aspects and negative aspects, and I think it's important to acknowledge both, and to try to come to a level of practicing self-compassion with it for the negative aspects, and to seek out, as Merisia was saying, don't ever cede that power, don't ever cede that authority. Own your life, even as a child, and that's another point that I want to bring out is we grow up and we get stupid. Children are oftentimes smarter than adults, and they're far more intuitive. They're much more in touch with feeling than we are. And they're actually beautiful to be around and to watch. We can learn a lot from them. And it's horrendous when we exploit that and abuse that and think of them as, inferior in some way. Because they have a lot to teach us in our adulthood. We need to slow down and breathe and stop the noise in our heads. And you're absolutely right about the patterns that are established in childhood, because that's what we take from those children, those beautiful creatures that are so smart. We take them and we make them cynical, and we hurt them and we wound them, and then we let them grow up to be just like us. And wow, what an answer we're going to have to give to God when we kneel before Him. Yeah, I mean, those are just kind of some of the things that I'm thinking about as we're talking. I know we're up against the clock here, but I guess my closing comment would be, and I know both of you are going to agree with me on this, one person can make a difference. One person can make a difference, and there's no reason why you can't be that one person. So it doesn't matter what all the people are doing. If that child has one person to reach out to that they can trust, that will not hurt them, exploit them, that will give them that love and nurture them, that can be enough. So I'll just leave it at that.
So we're going to stay for a few more minutes, Mark. So I want to ask you for your thoughts when we're, talking about the adult trying to encourage them to give space, to that child within them. What words would you give to an adult? I mean, within the past a couple weeks, I've found myself saying to adults, it's okay to let the 5-year-old speak in a safe space. I always emphasize the safe space and with support. So how would you encourage an adult to deal with that inner child who just did not have that voice then?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
I would say, the first step is to be honest. When you look back at yourself and what was going on, look and be honest. Don't pretend you had a rosy scenario, that everything was great, or don't sit there and say, oh, woe is me, my life was horrible. Sit there and go, what were some of the positives and some of the negatives? I mean, my mother was a difficult influence in my life. She was also a very positive influence in my life. And it sounds cynical, but in a lot of ways, she taught me what not to be. And I don't say that in a cruel way, because I don't harbor animosity. She had mental issues and all kinds of things, and God rest her soul. But I'm not angry about it. But I also learned a lot of the kind of things that I didn't want to, and what I would not do when I was a parent, and I didn't do when I became a parent. So it's also about lessons learned. As to what we can do today to action it, like I said, acknowledge, look back, and be honest. Try to get 20/20 as much as you can. And there's methods that we can do to that. Journaling is a great method for any kind of trauma in life. Just do stream of consciousness. Just start writing, and then put it away for a week or two, and pull it back out and read it. And you may actually be surprised at some of the things that this person wrote to you with you. So, and you can sit there and go, wow, I didn't even realize that I was thinking that. And that's the beauty of something like journaling, because it puts it in print. You can't deny it anymore. And sometimes that can be an epiphany. And I would strongly say that's one method. There are several, but I'd say that's something that everyone could do tonight. Grab a pen and paper and close the door and stream of consciousness for 30 minutes. Yeah. And then look at it for a couple of weeks, Yeah. And be surprised. It will help you grow. And empathy, that's a word that gets overused today. Everybody, empathy, but it's real. We need to look back, and we need to, and it's great. It's the do unto others thing. It's really kind of simple. Do unto others. When I was a kid, did I want that done to me? And if the answer is no, then why the heck are you doing it? It's kind of common sense, but we get into this rut where we're circling ourselves and we're circling the drain, and we don't even acknowledge it, and we don't even pay attention to it, and we just say, well, that's it. You need to listen to me because I'm Dad. Well, No, I don't. If you're wrong, Dad, then you're wrong. And you should be man enough to say, I'm wrong. And we're wrong at some point, at some time, on some occasion. So just, figure it out. And sometimes we need help. And that's why we have people we can trust. That's why we have friends. That's why we have people in our lives that can sit there and say, hey, Mark, you're being a knucklehead. Maybe you need to back off of this. And I've had people tell me that. And I thank them for that. Because sometimes you don't always see it with your own ego. Yeah. And your own way of thinking. And so to have people that you can trust enough to, there's a safe space to say, hey, you're being silly. Now wake up before you do something wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's important.
Well, I think the acknowledgement part is huge. Absolutely, journaling and showing empathy. But I think, like you said, it does start with being honest. It does start with acknowledgement. Now, that doesn't mean wait for the family dinner on Sunday and just we just blurting everything out at Thanksgiving. But within yourself, the acknowledgement starts there. And I want to say this, like when you're open with yourself, when you're honest with yourself, and you start moving down your own pathway, I believe that there is a physical relief that can come along with this. Because I used to have headaches all the time, and I didn't know why. But as I began to deal with these issues, those headaches stopped. Like I would know I was about to get a headache. Like I could feel like it was about to start. So I think dealing with issues would alleviate some of the physical pressures that our bodies are going through. Dealing with migraines and high blood pressure, diabetes. I mean, just like we read in an article. So I think not only is there a mental and emotional benefit to healing that inner child, it's a physical benefit too, for you to be able to operate and move and function in your body the way you should be able to. So like those moments when I felt like this is really heavy on me, it wasn't just heavy mentally and emotionally, it was heavy physically. I could feel it in my body. So do yourself that favor. It will help you to be able to sit down and be honest and let that 11-year-old, that 12-year-old speak in a safe space. I think you'll see changes physically also. I mean, if you have physical impairments that are happening and maybe you don't know why, because I didn't know why I was having those headaches, but when I started dealing with stuff, those headaches went away. It stopped. So there are benefits, I believe, to dealing with those hurts of the past. And not that it's easy, doesn't feel good to remember the way that I was feeling, to remember the reasons why I was feeling those ways, the things that happened. It does not feel good. It is hard when you do what you need to do for yourself. But at the end of it, it's worth it. Now, Merisia, I want to ask you a question that Mark put forth earlier for you, and it's in your experience. What is the experience of people in adulthood who are actually open to this exploration of giving that voice to them, to the inner child within themselves?
I think one of the things as far as experiencing going through that and giving that inner voice to that childhood, I think one of the things where they can find that strength is through prayer. That's one of the things we overlook. Some of us say, well, I don't know how to pray, so I'm not going to do it. But prayer is something that you can just start having a conversation with God and just expressing how you feel. And like what I love what you said earlier, that, God didn't, you can't blame God. God did not do this to you. The person who, abused you and triggered that trauma, they're the ones that's responsible for what has happened. And as one of the things, and it takes a lot of strength, because I remembered I was going through a really difficult time in my life. And it wasn't a trauma or anything, but it was just really difficult. And I remember I was praying, and in the middle of me praying, the Holy Spirit is telling me I must pray for the person that's causing me this pain. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. you you want me to pray for the person that is causing me this pain? I'm praying for, I'm praying for myself. Show me how I can get through this pain and get back on track and living life, and just being a normal person, whatever that is. But being obedient and listening to that word, I did pray for that person. And one of the things I realized as I'm looking back on it, I'm like, you know what? I actually took back my power, my power from that situation. I actually regained my power because I, stepped out of what I think I should do and went into, just being an obedient child and pray for that person. Whatever happens, it's up to God. And, one of the things I'm learning is to just let go and let God. One of the things I keep telling myself is remember the cross. Remember the cross. We should not just remember the cross on Easter and say, well, it's Easter and I'm going to go to church. And oh, yeah, this is when he was crucified. Bring God into that situation. You don't have to be an expert in the Bible. You don't have to know the Bible from cover to cover, but just invite God into that situation. Remember the cross. The cross reminds you how truly loved and unique you are. And sometimes that's all we need to remind ourselves. You know what? I am loved. My parents might not love me. My friends might think I'm a bit of an odd person. But you know what? In his eyes, I'm loved. In his eyes, I'm unique. In his eyes, the world is my oyster. So why would I block myself from having that communication and that relationship? And a lot of us overlook prayer, but prayer moves, and I know it's something we've always heard, but it truly moves mountains. And when you're at the point where you can look at your um the abuser and say, you know what, I forgive you. And in addition to that, I'm going to keep praying for you. To me, that just speaks volume. That's just a liberating moment where, you know what, I am now in control of this. I am now going to reshape this story. And I'm going to teach my kids, I'm going to show my community, when you're in these type of situations, this is how this is how you approach it. This is how you embrace it. And look at me. This is what the outcome can be like.
Yeah. So I thank you for what you shared. So I want to share this, and then Mark, I'm going to ask you to close us for tonight with final comments. But as we're talking about prayer, I want to talk about prayer and forgiveness really quick. Prayer is a conversation with God. However you talk to God. If you want to write your prayers out, if you want to verbally speak your words, if you quietly sit, meditate, it's between you and God. It does not have to be a prepared script or whatever. If you want to write it out first, or speak as you're writing, whatever it is, or take the word of God, give it back to him. Like you said, you would never leave me or forsake me. That's what I'm believing. That's what I'm counting on. You said that I'm the apple of your eye, God. That's what you said. So we give him his word back. But prayer is also, it's a two-way conversation. So we're not just talking. We're not just saying, this is what I want, this is what I need. It's also about saying thank you. And it's also about listening. But God understands where you are in the moment where you're there. He will help you pray. As a matter of fact, the only reason that we would even want to pray is because he touched our hearts to do so in the first place. It's like, I'm going to help you pray. I'm going to show you what to pray. I'm going to show you how to do it. That's how much God loves us. But he will help you wherever you are, whatever your prayer life is. I just say you should have one. You know, if you're a Christian, you should have a prayer life. You should have that communication of speaking and listening. And when we talk about forgiveness, God will help you to forgive. And forgiveness is different levels. It occurs at different times. You are not going to step into a hospital room and tell a woman who was just beaten and raped, now forgive this man who did this to you. It does not work like that. God will help your heart to forgive when you get to that point and you're ready to deal with that. It's really easy for me to forgive you if you bump into me and we're walking down a hard way. Something completely different when you try to kill me. That's a whole different level. And I need God to help my heart with that. And so I don't want to leave you with you were hurt, so now you just go forgive your mother for what she did. You forgive your father, or you forgive whoever. No, God will help you through that process when you're ready to be in that process. And I want to say forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. It does not. Forgiveness itself is about your own heart. It's about you being able to let it go and let God do whatever he's going to do. It's not saying that this person is right. It's not saying that they're excused for whatever they did, but it's saying, you know what, God, I'm letting this go and I'm going to let you deal with him. I'm going to let you deal with her. I'm going to let you deal with the situation. It's letting it go. And that's good for your own heart. But please understand, forgiveness does not mean reconciliation, because for some of us, it's not safe to be near the person who hurt us, who tried to hurt us. So sometimes, yeah, I forgive you, but I'll never see you again. It'll never be a reconciliation. So as we move through, we got to keep that in our minds, because some of us, we can get to a place of healing. Your 60-year-old heart can be healed. But if you walk in the door and put yourself back in the presence of this person who hurt you, you can revert back to that 4-year-old. And you don't want to put yourself in that position. So as we're saying pray, as we're saying forgive, it's in your time. That's between you and God. And I think that that's part of everybody's process whenever you get to that point. So don't feel pushed. Don't feel rushed. Don't feel like I got, that I just have to. No, God knows you. He's working through this with you. The point is to just move. You should move. Don't be stuck wherever you are. But my pace is not your pace. Because there are people who say to me, well, my ex-husband and we're best friends. We go out to dinner together. I'm not going to dinner with my ex-husband. Peace. Leave me alone. We are not friends. We don't have nothing to talk about. We have a minor child we need to communicate about. That's it. At this point in time, I can say, yes, I do forgive. But no, we're not about to sit down and watch a movie together. That is not safe for me. I know the possibilities of what could happen to me physically if I let my guard down and allow myself to be in that situation. But this is a huge thing. It's nothing small about it. But I pray that the conversation was open for you to think, open for you to process, and open for you to get to where you need to be for yourself. With that, Mark, if you can hear me, if you can just give us our final words for this evening on giving voice to that inner child, to that adult who may be struggling right now.
Sure. The thing that I was going to say was that I think it's important to bear in mind that this journey is a solo journey, that we are, we don't expect, as we do this self-introspection and we review our lives and we come to new ideas and new revelations, it's not a thing where we're going to tap people on the shoulder and say, hey, you know what? I was thinking about this, and 30 years ago, you really were an idiot. I don't expect that. So, I mean, in that regard, it's a solo journey. And then I was listening to both of you, and preach it, sisters. Go for it. You're absolutely right. And thanks for screwing my head on right. And that is, if you're a person of faith, you do have someone who has been with you and is always with you and will help to heal you. What concerns me is people who are not people of faith, people who have been so jaded and so cynical in life and so deeply wounded that they have given up on God as well. And I mean, there's a lot of places to go for that, and we're way over the limit. Maybe that's a topic for another night. But I would obviously, as I'm a Christian myself, and I'm a deep believer, and I would say I know that has pulled me through some very dark hours, and it's pulled people I know through dark hours. But I am concerned for the people who don't have that to fall back on, how they do that. And I mean, as the first steps is to stay grounded in what we were talking about, the journaling, the therapeutic techniques. There's nothing wrong with seeking therapy as you come to these revelations. There are options for you in a temporal sense, but this is ultimately a spiritual battle for true healing, in my opinion. And I know that's that can stir people up saying that, but I really see that's where true healing comes from.
Yeah.
So that's enough for me to start a quagmire.
Thank you so much, Merisia. Thank you so much for being here with us. LuvBay, please remember to tune in to Gospel Sunday. Merisia, what time is your program?
Oh, it's Sunday morning from 8 a.m. until 10 a.m. So if you can, just hop on over and let's just, praise God, listen to some Bible stories, and just enjoy the moment that we have a God that loves us unconditionally,
Awesome. Thank you so much, Merisia. Thank you for being here with us. LuvBay, Merisia will be back with us again in the future. Mark, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate your thoughts and your input. LuvBay, we love you. We love you guys. Thank you for being here. If you want to catch up on previous episodes of our program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DV. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe via whichever platform you are watching us by. Thank you so much for joining Suffering in Silence with Pastor Tia. We're here on LuvBay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. LuvBay, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Good evening.